In the remote village of Lumbala, cradled between lush forests and winding rivers that shimmered under the African sun, Amina, a young and hopeful mother, felt the first sharp pangs of labor as the morning light spilled over the thatched huts, casting golden hues on the mud paths and the awakening villagers. She had long dreamed of motherhood, imagining the tender warmth of holding her child. Yet, as the contractions intensified, fear mingled with anticipation because stories told by elders about difficult births echoed in her mind. And she gathered her courage, summoning Mama Zuri, the revered village midwife, whose hands were both gentle and resolute, and who arrived promptly, her presence exuding calm, confidence, and an unspoken assurance that all would be well. While outside, neighbors whispered prayers, lit small fires to guide protective spirits, and left offerings of herbs and fruits at the hut's entrance to bless the mother and child. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, the scent of burning sage mixing with the earthy aroma of the hut. As Mama Zuri guided Amina through each stage of labor with steady hands and soothing words, explaining the natural rhythms of birth, monitoring the baby's position, and chanting protective incantations in the ancient language of their ancestors, invoking unseen forces to guard them from misfortune, while Amina's mind drifted to memories of her own mother, whose lullabies had once carried her to sleep, and she silently vowed to give her child the same sense of love and safety, even as the sun climbed higher, illuminating the forest canopy and scattering shadows across the river that meandered lazily toward distant hills. Hours passed, and Amina's labor grew more intense, her sweat soaking the colorful fabrics she wore, each contraction a reminder of the strength flowing through generations of women in her family. And just when exhaustion threatened to overtake her, Mama Zuri detected that the child's position was unusual, and she called urgently for additional herbs, a special oil, and the village's delivery instruments. While outside, the villagers' prayers grew louder, a chorus of hope and fear mingling in the humid air, as they watched the smoke spiral into the sky like messages to the gods. With precise movements and whispered chants, Mama Zuri worked tirelessly, guiding Amina's body and spirit through the final, most painful stages, until finally, after a day that felt like an eternity, the baby emerged, fragile yet alive, crying softly, its skin glowing in the warm light, as Mama Zuri handed it gently to Amina, who pressed her tears and heart against the tiny chest, feeling relief and an unexpected apprehension because Mama Zuri immediately noticed that the infant's limb was bent in a peculiar way, signaling a unique journey ahead. The villagers outside celebrated quietly with fire sparks and muted drums, while the forest seemed to respond, a distant chorus of birds calling in rhythm with the mother's heartbeat. And as twilight painted the sky in deep purples and crimson, Amina held her child, aware that this birth marked not only the start of a new life, but the beginning of a story that would ripple through the village and beyond, a story of hardship, courage, ancestral protection, love, and the mysterious fate that awaited her child, whose entrance into the world had been both miraculous and foreboding, promising challenges, resilience, and a destiny intertwined with the magic and realities of their African homeland. As the night enveloped the village in a soft, protective darkness, carrying with it the whispers of generations who had walked similar paths, their strength and spirit now flowing into this new life, ready to witness the unfolding tale of hope, struggle, and extraordinary beginnings. As the first night settled over the village of a calm yet tense silence enveloped the thatched huts, while Amina sat awake, cradling her newborn child, whose bent limb and unusual posture filled her heart with both wonder and apprehension. For Mama Zuri's words of caution lingered in her mind like a shadow that could not be ignored. The baby's faint coos and fragile movements, however, brought warmth to her weary body, and as she gazed down at the tiny, perfect face, she marveled at the miracle of life that had emerged from hours of pain, struggle, and the unyielding strength of generations of women before her. While outside, the village glimmered under the silvery light of the rising moon, the forest around whispering secrets carried on the night breeze, and distant cries of nocturnal animals reminded her of the wild and mystical environment into which her child had been born, where every sound, smell, and shadow seemed alive with meaning and portent. Neighbors peeked through windows and doorways, offering whispered blessings, sharing words of advice for the new mother, and recounting tales of children who had been born under unusual circumstances but had grown to be strong, wise, or even legendary in their own ways, their voices blending into a chorus of hope and communal support, while inside the hut, Amina wrapped her baby in soft, hand-woven cloth, recalling the lullabies her mother had sung to her in her own infancy, and singing them now with a trembling voice that carried both fear and love, as her mind wandered to visions of the child's future adventures, hardships, triumphs, and the unknown challenges that awaited. And she resolved that she would nurture the child with unwavering devotion, guiding them through each step with courage, patience, and wisdom. The night deepened, and shadows of the forest stretched over the village, creating shapes that seemed alive, almost as if the ancestors themselves were watching and guarding the newborn, while the gentle flicker of small fires outside painted warm patterns on the mud walls and thatched roofs, casting long, dancing shadows that added to the magical aura of the night. And Amina felt an unspoken connection with the spirits of her lineage, sensing that her child was not an ordinary infant, but one whose life would be intertwined with extraordinary events, destiny, and perhaps even the mystical forces of their land. Hours passed as she rocked the baby, noting the subtle quirks of movement, the tiny expressions that revealed both innocence and intelligence, and the irregularity of the bent limb that had concerned Mama Zuri, which seemed to pulse with potential, a silent promise of strength yet to be realized. And as the moon traced its path across the sky, Amina's mind wandered to stories of heroic ancestors, healers, and mystics whose lives had shaped the culture of wondering if her child too would walk a path that balanced ordinary struggles with remarkable destiny. While outside, the village remained alive with quiet whispers, rustling leaves, and distant drums of ceremonial preparation for the next day, reminding her that life in this African village was both communal and interconnected, every birth affecting the rhythm of the community and the pulse of the land. And in that moment, as she held her fragile yet promising child close, Amina understood that love, resilience, and unwavering hope would be her tools to navigate the uncertain road ahead, a road that would demand courage, faith, and the unbreakable bond between mother and child, as the child began the first chapter of a life destined to be extraordinary amidst the trials, beauty, and magic of Lumbala. As dawn broke over Lumbala, the golden sunlight spilling across the thatched roofs and reflecting on the meandering river, Amina awoke with a renewed sense of purpose, her newborn cradled gently in her arms, whose tiny fingers and unusual bent limb seemed to carry both fragility and promise. And though fatigue from the previous day weighed heavily upon her, an overwhelming love and responsibility surged through her veins, compelling her to prepare the child for the challenges that awaited in the vibrant yet unpredictable world around them. Mama Zuri visited at first light, her eyes filled with both concern and reassurance, examining the baby's condition carefully, her hands steady as she adjusted the wraps and murmured words of blessing, while outside the village stirred to life with the rhythmic pounding of drums, the calls of market traders, and the laughter of children, creating a backdrop of normalcy that contrasted sharply with the weight of Amina's private worries. And as she walked outside, sunlight warming her skin and the scent of earth and wildflowers filling her senses, she observed how the villagers interacted, how elders passed on wisdom to younger generations, and how every action, no matter how small, was steeped in tradition and respect for the land and its spirits. Throughout the day, Amina rocked her baby under the shade of the ancient baobab tree, singing softly, watching the world around them, noticing the way the wind danced through the leaves, carrying whispers of ancestral guidance, and how the child's eyes tracked movement with uncanny alertness, prompting a mixture of awe and contemplation in Amina's heart, while Mama Zuri spoke of herbs and rituals that could strengthen the child's body and protect against unseen dangers, explaining the delicate balance between medical care, spiritual protection, and community support, and how, in their African heritage, such integration was essential for nurturing a life destined to face both ordinary hardships and extraordinary events. As the sun climbed higher, shadows of the forest shifted across the village, the scent of cooking fires mingling with the fragrance of wildflowers, and Amina reflected on her own childhood, the lessons her mother had taught, the stories of courage, resilience, and mystical happenings that shaped the moral and spiritual fabric of the village, all of which now felt vividly relevant as she contemplated the trajectory of her child's life, whose presence seemed already charged with significance, a quiet reminder that every individual bore a destiny interwoven with the collective heartbeat of the community and the invisible forces of nature. Hours passed in a rhythm of feeding, gentle songs, and whispered prayers, the baby responding with subtle movements that revealed early signs of awareness and strength, while Amina's heart swelled with determination to provide love, guidance, and protection, to instill courage, patience, and wisdom in preparation for challenges that were both foreseen and mysterious. And as evening approached, the forest and river reflecting hues of orange and pink, Amina felt a connection to generations of mothers and ancestors, sensing that her child's life was the continuation of an intricate, sacred story, a tale of resilience, hope, and the profound interplay of fate and free will that would unfold, trials and magic of Lumbala. And she knew that each passing day would be a step in this journey, teaching both mother and child lessons of endurance, courage, and love in a world that was at once ordinary and extraordinary, vibrant with life, shadowed with challenges, and steeped in the enduring presence of spirits, ancestors, and the relentless pulse of nature surrounding them. As the days turned into a week in the village of Amina found herself adjusting to the delicate rhythms of caring for her newborn, whose unusual bent limb continued to draw both concern and fascination from Mama Zuri, who visited each morning with a basket of herbs, oils, and protective charms, explaining the subtle remedies that could strengthen the child's body and balance energies in alignment with ancestral traditions. While outside, the village thrummed with life, the rhythmic calls of market traders, the laughter of children chasing one another across the mud paths, and the distant sound of drums from a nearby ceremony blending into a symphony that reminded Amina of the interconnectedness of life, community, and nature. Each day, she observed her child with heightened awareness, noting the subtle movements, tiny gestures, and emerging expressions that suggested resilience and perhaps a spark of extraordinary potential, as if the baby's very presence was charged with significance beyond ordinary comprehension. While Mama Zuri shared stories of legendary children born under unusual circumstances, tales of courage, wisdom, and mystical encounters, urging Amina to nurture not only the body but also the spirit, to instill courage, compassion, and awareness of the unseen forces that shaped their world, and to recognize that in Lumbala, every life carried the imprint of both communal legacy and individual destiny. As Amina rocked the baby under the sprawling shade of the ancient baobab tree, the wind whispering secrets through its gnarled branches and carrying the earthy fragrance of the forest, she reflected on the delicate balance of nurturing a fragile life while preparing it for a world full of trials, wonders, and mystical forces, observing how the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dancing patterns on the ground that mirrored the intricate web of fate surrounding them. And she silently vowed to guide her child with unwavering devotion, drawing upon the strength of generations of women whose resilience had carried the village through hardship and triumph alike. While the child's subtle coos and small grasping motions filled her heart with a blend of awe, fear, and boundless love, reminding her that motherhood was both a sacred responsibility and an extraordinary privilege. Throughout the day, Amina performed small rituals taught by Mama Zuri, placing protective charms near the child's sleeping mat, whispering blessings into the night, and singing lullabies that resonated with ancestral voices. The forest and river nearby, providing a natural soundtrack to these intimate acts, while the villagers, though engaged in their own routines, periodically offered glances of encouragement, shared advice, or left small tokens of support, demonstrating the deep sense of communal care and interconnectedness that defined life in Lumbala. And as dusk approached, painting the sky in hues of deep orange and purple, Amina felt a quiet yet powerful certainty that her child's life was destined to be remarkable, shaped by both the tangible guidance of family and community and the unseen influence of spiritual forces, and that each day, challenge, and moment of love would contribute to a journey that intertwined fate, resilience, and the extraordinary potential of new life, all set against the backdrop of a vibrant, mystical African village where every birth carried the weight of history, the promise of the future, and the enduring magic of nature, culture, and ancestral legacy. As the second week passed in Lumbala, Amina began to notice subtle but significant changes in her child, whose small movements and expressions suggested both curiosity and awareness beyond what she had expected from a newborn. And though the bent limb remained a concern, Mama Zuri reassured her that with proper care, gentle exercises, and ancestral blessings, the child could grow strong and resilient. While the village itself seemed alive with a rhythm that mirrored the unfolding journey of mother and child, from the soft chatter of neighbors sharing news at the communal well to the vibrant energy of children running barefoot through the dusty paths, the occasional call of a trader announcing fresh produce, and the distant beat of ceremonial drums that echoed through the forest, all creating a backdrop of life that was both ordinary and infused with the mystical pulse of African tradition. Each morning, Amina performed the rituals taught by Mamas, blending practical care with spiritual guidance, washing the baby's delicate skin with herbal infusions, wrapping it in soft cloths dyed with natural pigments, whispering prayers for protection, strength, and wisdom, and singing lullabies that carried the voice of her ancestors, their words weaving an invisible net of resilience around the child, while Mama Zuri guided her hands and shared stories of children who had faced unusual beginnings but had grown to fulfill extraordinary destinies, reminding Amina that the balance between nurturing, discipline, and spiritual awareness was essential for shaping a life of purpose and courage. As the sun climbed higher, Amina would venture outside, cradling the baby against her chest, feeling the warmth of sunlight on her skin, the gentle breeze carrying scents of wildflowers and river water, observing the way the village interacted in harmonious interdependence, each person contributing to a rhythm of survival, celebration, and learning, and reflecting on how her own upbringing had been shaped by stories, rituals, and lessons that prepared her for the responsibilities of motherhood, inspiring her to pass down similar values and wisdom, while also fostering independence, confidence, and curiosity in her child, who seemed already attuned to the smallest details of their eyes following birds in flight, fingers brushing leaves, responding to the melody of daily life with subtle movements that filled Amina with both awe and cautious hope. Afternoons were spent near the riverbank, where Amina would gently bathe the baby, teaching it to respond to water's touch, rhythm, and flow, while Mama Zuri supervised from a distance, offering tips on strengthening the limbs, ensuring proper nutrition, and chanting softly to invoke protective spirits. As the village continued its daily routine around them, women weaving mats and baskets, men tending livestock, children laughing and playing in the sun, their energy a constant reminder of the vitality and resilience of life in Lumbala. And through these experiences, Amina felt a growing sense of purpose, realizing that her role was not only to nurture her child's physical needs, but also to prepare it emotionally, spiritually, and mentally for the journey ahead, a journey that would require courage, wisdom, and resilience in a world where the extraordinary often intertwined with the ordinary, where the unseen forces of ancestors, spirits, and nature played as significant a role as human guidance. And as twilight descended, painting the sky with hues of amber, rose, and indigo. Amina held her child close, whispering promises of protection, love, and guidance, feeling the weight and beauty of responsibility, the magic of life, and the certainty that each day, each lesson, and each ritual would shape a destiny that was both uniquely the child's and intimately connected to the enduring legacy of Lumbala, its people, and the mystical land that had witnessed countless stories of hardship, hope, and extraordinary beginnings. As the third week unfolded in the village of Lumbala, Amina grew increasingly attuned to the subtle rhythms of her newborn's behavior, noting how the child responded to sunlight filtering through the thatched roofs, to the soft rustle of leaves in the surrounding forest, and to the faint hum of daily village life that wove itself into every moment, while Mama Zuri continued her morning visits, examining the bent limb with a practiced eye, offering gentle exercises, herbal treatments, and protective chants, reminding Amina that patience, consistency, and ancestral guidance were essential in nurturing a child whose life began under extraordinary circumstances. Throughout the day, the village pulsed with activity, from the rhythmic pounding of millet in communal mortar to the distant calls of fishermen along the winding river, and the laughter of children chasing one another barefoot over dusty paths, creating a lively backdrop that contrasted with the quiet, concentrated energy inside Amina's hut, where every gesture, coo, and movement of the baby was observed, recorded in memory, and responded to with a mix of tenderness, discipline, and cautious hope, while Amina reflected on the profound responsibility she bore, realizing that her child's future would be shaped not only by her care but also by the invisible threads of ancestral wisdom, communal guidance, and the mysterious forces that permeated the land. Afternoons were often spent under the shade of the ancient baobab tree, its massive trunk and sprawling branches offering shelter and a sense of timelessness as Amina performed the rituals taught by Mama Zuri. From gently massaging the baby's limbs to whispering blessings for strength, resilience, and clarity of mind, the faint scent of wildflowers and river mist enhancing the sense of connection between mother, child, and the living landscape around them. While outside, villagers continued their routines, tending gardens, trading goods, and interacting in ways that reinforced the interdependence and social fabric of Lumbala, a constant reminder that individual growth was inseparable from communal life, and that every child's journey was both personal and shared. As the sun shifted across the sky, casting golden highlights over the mud walls of the huts and the flowing river, Amina's thoughts often drifted to visions of her child's potential, imagining a future shaped by courage, intelligence, and an unusual destiny. Aware that the bent limb might present challenges but also signify uniqueness and latent strength, and she resolved to nurture not only physical health but also emotional intelligence, moral understanding, and spiritual awareness, teaching through example, stories, and small daily lessons that embedded wisdom, respect for nature, and reverence for ancestors into the child's developing consciousness. Evening brought a cooler breeze, the air rich with the scent of cooking fires, earth, and the distant chorus of nocturnal animals, while Amina rocked her baby and sang lullabies that carried the echoes of generations past, feeling the weight of responsibility, the depth of love, and the certainty that every choice, touch, and word contributed to the shaping of a life that was both fragile and extraordinary, intertwined with the ongoing story of Lumbala, its traditions, and the unseen forces that guided, protected, and challenged all who lived within its bounds. And as stars began to glitter above the forest canopy, painting the night sky with brilliance and mystery, Amina held her child close, feeling the promise of the future, the strength of ancestry, and the unbreakable bond that would guide both of them through the trials, triumphs, and magical possibilities that awaited in the days to come. Knowing that the journey had only just begun in a world that was vibrant, mystical, and full of unseen wonders waiting to shape the destiny of her extraordinary child. As the fourth week dawned over the village of Lumbala, Amina noticed a remarkable attentiveness in her newborn, whose eyes seemed to track movements with heightened awareness, while the bent limb, though still fragile, displayed subtle signs of growing strength, prompting Mama Zuri to smile and emphasize the importance of daily exercises, herbal treatments, and blessings to ensure the child's health and resilience. While outside, the village thrived with its vibrant symphony of life, women pounding millet and weaving baskets, children laughing and running barefoot along the sunlit paths, elders sharing wisdom beneath the shade of ancient trees, and the river glistening under the morning sun, all forming an environment of communal care, learning, and interconnectedness that Amina understood was as vital to her child's growth as any ritual or physical exercise. Throughout the day, Amina devoted herself to observing and responding to every subtle gesture and sound of the baby, gently massaging the bent limb, whispering blessings, singing lullabies imbued with ancestral stories, and noting the smallest expressions that hinted at intelligence, curiosity, and emotional awareness, while reflecting on her own childhood, the lessons learned from her mother and grandmother, and the lineage of women whose strength and resilience flowed through her own veins, providing guidance, courage, and patience for the sacred task of raising a child whose life began under extraordinary circumstances and whose destiny seemed intertwined with both the visible and invisible forces of Lumbala. Afternoons were spent near the riverbank or under the protective canopy of the baobab tree, where the baby would experience the gentle sway of leaves, the murmur of water, and the warmth of sunlight on the skin. As Amina performed the rituals taught by Mama Zuri, combining practical care with spiritual guidance, ensuring that the child's body, mind, and spirit were nurtured in harmony, while the forest and river seemed to echo with whispers of the ancestors, their presence felt in every breeze, bird call, and ripple of water, reinforcing Amina's conviction that her child's life was destined for significance, and that each day of care, each prayer, and each moment of attention contributed to shaping a resilient, wise, and extraordinary human being. As the sun moved westward, casting elongated shadows across the village paths and painting the thatched huts in warm hues, Amina would reflect on the challenges that lay ahead, the possibility of physical limitations, the trials of life in a village, both ordinary and mystical, and the need for courage, patience, and communal support. But these thoughts were tempered by hope, the visible growth in her child's strength, the responsiveness of the baby's expressions, and the quiet assurance that love, devotion, and ancestral guidance could prepare a child to navigate even the most difficult paths. Evening brought a softer light, a cooler breeze, and the rising scent of cooking fires mingling with the earthy aroma of the forest, while Amina rocked her child, singing melodies that carried the stories of generations, infusing the baby with cultural memory, moral lessons, and spiritual awareness. And as stars appeared overhead, sparkling in the deep indigo sky, she felt a profound sense of connection to her ancestors, the land, and the invisible threads of destiny weaving through her child's life. Understanding that motherhood was a sacred, ongoing dialogue with both the seen and unseen, a journey requiring unwavering patience, unyielding love, and deep attentiveness. And as she held her newborn close, feeling the gentle heartbeat and warmth against her chest, Amina knew that each day, each ritual, and each nurturing action was a building block in the unfolding story of a child whose life was destined to be extraordinary, intertwined with the magic, trials, and beauty of Lumbala, the village, the ancestors, and the mystical forces that shaped the land. As the first month of life drew to a close in the village of Lumbala, Amina reflected on the extraordinary journey she and her child had shared. From the agonizing labor and the anxious first night to the daily rituals, lessons, and care that had shaped each day with love, resilience, and a deep connection to the ancestral spirits, while the baby, whose bent limb now showed promising strength, displayed an alertness and responsiveness that filled her heart with both pride and cautious hope, signaling that despite the unusual beginning, this child possessed a rare combination of determination, intelligence, and innate vitality, qualities that would guide them through the trials and wonders of a life intertwined with the rhythms of the village, the forces of nature, and the enduring presence of ancestors who had watched over countless generations. Mornings were marked by golden sunlight spilling across the huts, the river reflecting glimmers of light and the gentle stirring of the forest. As Amina performed her nurturing routines, bathing and massaging the baby, singing lullabies that carried stories of courage, wisdom, and mystical events from the past, while Mama Zuri offered guidance, checked the child's development, and reminded Amina that physical care, spiritual protection, and communal support must continue hand in hand, for in love, the unseen forces of nature and ancestors were as vital to a child's future as love, nutrition, and moral guidance. And Amina absorbed these lessons fully, committing herself to raising a child who would not only survive but thrive, embodying the virtues and strengths of those who had come before. Throughout the day, the village thrummed with activity, the rhythmic pounding of millet, the chatter of women weaving baskets, children laughing and racing along dusty paths, elders teaching, and the distant beat of ceremonial drums, while Amina observed how every element of communal life connected, reinforcing the notion that her child's growth and destiny were inextricably linked to the well-being, traditions, and stories of Lumbala. And she carefully allowed the baby to witness and absorb the lessons embedded in daily life, from respect for nature to empathy for others, to the importance of resilience, courage, and wisdom in facing challenges both ordinary and extraordinary. As the sun moved toward evening, casting long shadows across the village and turning the sky into a canvas of deep oranges, purples, and pinks, Amina rocked her child beneath the ancient baobab tree, feeling a profound sense of continuity and purpose, imagining the future adventures, lessons, and trials that awaited, and understanding that the path ahead would demand patience, guidance, and unwavering love, but that her child's inherent strength, the blessings of ancestors, and the support of the village would provide a foundation for an extraordinary life. While the forest whispered its timeless stories, the river mirrored the changing sky, and the stars gradually appeared overhead, each one a symbol of the vast, mysterious forces that shaped destinies and connected all living beings. As night deepened, Amina whispered promises into her child's ear, vowing protection, love, and guidance, and reflecting on the month's journey. She felt an unshakable confidence that this child, born under unusual circumstances but nurtured with devotion, wisdom, and spiritual care, would grow to embody the resilience, courage, and extraordinary potential of generations past, carrying forward the legacy of Lumbala, the strength of ancestry, and the enduring magic that flowed through the village, the land, and the hearts of its people. And as the gentle night breeze rustled leaves and distant fires flickered, she held her child close, aware that this was not the end but the beginning of a remarkable life story, one that would be shaped by love, trials, mystical forces, and the vibrant, interconnected world that surrounded them, promising a future that was as extraordinary as the journey that had brought them to this moment.